interview with Rod MacKenzie, who has insider information about the Kennedy assassination. And Rod has this fascinating background going to Cuba, learning how to make fake IDs from, sounds like a mob-associated school, to meeting up with Jack Ruby. And I'll let Rod tell his story. So I'm going to hand the mic off to Mr. Roderick A. MacKenzie, and he's going to tell you his story, and we're going to have some questions and answers afterwards.
Thank you very much. I guess you start by being born. I was born in Lowell, Massachusetts, raised around Lowell, Dracut, and Hudson, New Hampshire. Lowell and Dracut are in Massachusetts. And went on all those years until I got to probably 15, 16, I was in school and I accidentally, I burglarized the damn school and went in to steal Halloween costumes with 5 other kids and burned it caught on fire when I lit a candle and I got caught. Wouldn't turn the other kids in. I got given a sort of sentence that I had to go into the military at the age of 17. So I went in National Guard then at 16, and then I went in the Army at 17. Went in the Army, went to Fort Devens, Massachusetts. Somebody yelled, "Who wants to be a pineapple up there in the freezing cold?" And I says to the guy next to me, "What's a pineapple?" He says, "Don't put up your hand for that, kid. You'll have to go to Hawaii." Well, here I am in muck and snow and crap, and that sounded pretty good to me. I put up my hand. Well, I had to become a ranger, so I passed all the tests. They sent me to Hawaii, took basic, ended up in Korea, saw the wonders of the war, went to Japan, then back to the States. I was with a ranger company up in West Point, the United States Military Academy, harassing the cadets until I got out. I did some tree surgery after that, went back to the animal farm, nothing was the same. The Army had been pretty good to me. I decided I'd take my reserve, go in for another year, and they let me go to medic school. So I went to the medic school training at Fort Sam Houston, Texas, then to Letterman Army Hospital in Presidio, San Francisco. In San Francisco, I hung out at a place called the El Rancho Bar outside the gate of the Presidio on Van Ness, and I met a guy named Bill Morgan there, and the bartender was a good friend of mine too, Bill Herzog. From there, was told while I was still in the Army, if I stayed in longer than my year extension, I would go back to a line ranger infantry company. And I didn't want that. I liked the hospital work I was doing. So I got out and took my 4 years more of inactive reserve. I noticed Morgan had a lot of money. He wasn't making it on being a watchman. So I talked to him and he said, well, he could use me. He was doing burglaries. Well, I had larceny in my soul, so it didn't sound bad to me. He started training me in burglary. So we did that. He was affiliated with some mobsters. It was just, I became a fairly good burglar. And we were stashing money in an old tire in the back of the Ford we'd bought and headed for Los Angeles. Well, we get down to Los Angeles. Morgan knew Del Graham there and John Rosselli. So Rosselli comes over and he says, why don't you guys go to work for us? Well, I don't know who us is. Morgan says, it's the mob. That sounds good to both of us. He sends us an address to Las Vegas. We go and meet this Carl. That's his first name. That's all we got out of him. And Carl puts us on to some real heavy stuff. We're talking diamonds, coin collections, stuff like that. People out of town, bigwigs, and we go in and burglarize that place and go, well, the heat came down on us again. And we're protected, so it's all right. And we decided to go over to Cuba. So we head to Cuba. And when we get there, I was passing off a lot of identification. And it wasn't the best in the world, but it was pretty good. And evidently got on the police list of people to be watched. And McWillie told me, he says, look, if you're going to do this stuff, you better get with somebody that can use you. So he introduced me to a fellow named Abe. And he's supposed to be with the Defense Intelligence Agency. They decided they're going to send me to school. They send me up to Fort Detrick, Maryland, and I go into an old dilapidated building that had been a chemical warfare place where they make gas. And they have a classroom there. And it's called Seals and Flaps School. Well, that's not the real name. That's what we called it. It was an identification school. And we learn how to make seals, how to open envelopes, and how to steal identity, how to revive dead people, you name it, all the good things you do when you're changing somebody's identity. They tell me I'm going to run a safe house. Well, I didn't know what the hell a safe house was. They said, you've got carnival knowledge and circus knowledge. We'd like to put people on the back ends of a carnival and just let them sit there, and they'd be working and be out of everybody's way, and nobody know who they are. You travel with the show. I said, I can do that. He said, it's great. You're going up to see somebody in Chicago. I go up to Chicago. I meet Sam Giacana there, turn over a truck, and my identification factory, which was in 3 big suitcases, print and press, all that stuff, all those papers. And after they pull me out of the hospital, they turn me over to the FBI, and I call up Rosselli. 2 days later, in the middle of the night, they let me out of the jail. Houston, Texas, they tell me I'll know who I'm going to meet. They don't tell me who it'll be, but they say I will know him. So I stay the night at the Travelers Hotel. I go out, and here's David Ferry, who I knew already. And he and 2 gay blades that were Latins, Charlie Frederick Rogers, is sitting in the back of the Cadillac, driving like maniacs, and we go to Dallas. And so in comes this guy, and it's Mac Wallace. Mac Wallace comes in. He's got the same shirt I've got on. And we talk. He pulls out his flasks, and in comes this well-dressed man, and he introduces himself, gives me a card, and everything else. Is Miranda. Miranda has a restaurant. He says he's with Defense Intelligence Agency, too. So that's okay. And we all go over to the carousel. I meet Jack Rubenstein there. That's what I call him. Everybody calls him Jack Ruby. We sit for a little while, and it's pretty boring, and Miranda's going to leave. In comes this guy, Tippett. He's in plain clothes. And Jefferson Davis Tippett. He had been with the 82nd Airborne, and so we got along. I'd been with the 508th, and so we common ground there, and he's a cop. In fact, half the guys in the place are cops. But so we get out of there, and we go back over to he's taking charge of me now, and Wallison stays in, I think he stayed in but anyway, he disappears, and I go with Tippett in his car over to the cabana, and he has the key to a room. I go to stay in the room. He says, I'll be here in the morning for you. I'm going to take you to the safe house, and that'll be it. You'll be running that from now on. You have to take care of it, and motel keeper for the safe house. That's fine. He says, I'll be here in the morning. So the morning comes, I end up with a cop in front of the place in a police car, and he picks me up. I throw my bag in it, and we go out to Holland Avenue, and I go into the garage, coach house in back of another house. I go in there, and he says, this is your house. The rooms here, there was 5 rooms in all, I think. And said, you're going to take care of this, and you keep the beds made. People will come and go. You just have to take care of them, go out and get their food. They're not allowed to leave here or anything else. So that was great. And I had made the deal earlier with Rubenstein that he would introduce me to a doctor that I could go to work at a hospital. I didn't know which one. So I was to meet that doctor at St. Anne's. So I went over there the next day, and I meet Dr. Sparkman, Robert Sparkman, and he had a surgery at St. Anne's and at Baylor. So he sends me over to Baylor University Truett Medical Center. I get a job in there as a surgical nurse, and scrub surgery there. Was 30-something operating rooms in this place, gigantic. That working thoracic surgery. We get this all started, and then I'm going back and forth every day running the safe house, I didn't get any clients for a little while, and then all at once they started coming in. Well, I get quite a few clients, and some of them are from Corsica. There was guys from by way of Mexico that came to me. They stayed for a little while, complained about the food and the booze. And there was a couple of women. There was quite just an assortment of people coming and going from there. And I'm working the afternoons. I'm taking care of them in the daytime. I'm doing real well. This is Dallas, and from August till November of '63. Yeah, '63. So I don't know that this thing with Kennedy's coming down, other than I know that everybody hates him. We hated him because he was of the Bay of Pigs thing. Everybody I knew hated Kennedy. It wasn't until after he got killed that everybody liked him. You know, that's no kidding. Around Dallas, nobody said a good word for any of the Kennedys till then. H.L. Hunt put in a full-page newspaper thing and had planes up above dropping flyers. Treason, Kennedy wanted for treason, all that stuff the day before the hit parade. It's just, I'm getting ahead of the thing. I didn't know the thing was coming down. I went to work that day. They said the night before they told me I had to meet John Rosselli. He was going to be in town on the 22nd and down at the Baylor. He'd meet me in the lunchroom there, which was a big cafeteria. And John Rosselli and Jake Miranda are both there. They both sitting there, both in suits. And John's on the phone a lot. 1 o'clock comes, and I guess the hit went down, and Rosselli must have known. He come back very shaken to the table, and he said, "We won't be needing your services here. You just go to work like you always do." So I don't know what I was supposed to do at that time or place, but they took Kennedy to Parkland, to where if they turned around and come right back to Baylor, it would have been either way they could have gone. Those are the two biggest emergency centers there were. So I go to work at 3 o'clock. Everybody's talking about the damn thing, and now I'm aware of what I was in the middle of, pretty much. So I just went along with it and went back to working, and I stayed there working, and I get told by Miranda a couple of days later that I'm going to have to change jobs. And I go over to Parkland, and what a surgical technician like myself will be in the OR, in the doctor's lounge. You change and just keep your ear to what's being said, and anything you hear, bring it back to Jake at night, which I did. First, before that happens, and I guess this is the most important thing of the whole thing, Mac Wallace comes into Jake Miranda's place where I ate every day, and Jake's closed. A bunch of gangsters are in there, but nobody but gangsters and myself, and Wallace is in the back room pretty drunk. And there's a labyrinth in the back of the place where they played cards and stuff like that. I'm sitting out there having my meal, and Jake comes out. He says, "Will you go sit with Wallace and keep him from coming out and bothering the people?" He says, "If you can get him to leave here, I'd appreciate it." So I do. I said, "Well, I need to get to work." He says, "Don't worry about it." So I didn't go to work. That was at Baylor at that time. I was already in for quitting, so it didn't matter. And Wallace says, I said, "Let's get out of here," to Mac Wallace. And he says, all right. And we get in this truck, and we go over to Fort Worth. Well, everything's closed. Everybody's very sorry because Kennedy got hit. Wallace and I go over there, Fort Worth. We go to Gary's cellar where the Secret Service people had been the night before they went out with partying when they went with parade, And we go in there and have a couple of drinks. Max says, "Well, I know a motel we can go to and go over there and get laid and have a good time." So we go over there. These two Spanish chicks I'd never seen before, never saw again. Nice. Very nice. We sit there getting loaded, and Max starts telling me the story. He considered it like I was in on this thing, and it really wasn't. And he's telling me, it all started in New Orleans, and we practiced down there, and we practiced up at Red Rock in Colorado, and we practiced a whole bunch of places on this hit that we did. So I'm hearing this, and what the hell? So I go back and get to the bathroom, and I start writing on toilet paper and what he's telling me. and he gave me the names of everybody that he said was in Mac Wallace, is admitting he was the head of the thing under Cliff Carter, who was Johnson's lawyer. And to set up this hit thing, he gave me all the teams. I've got it in my book over there. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but he named everybody sooner or later, and I just kept writing. A lot of them I had repeats on. I'd go to the bathroom, come back, go to the bathroom, come back. I knew he was a hitman. He was a killer. Killed Johnson's niece, a cousin, a sister, or something. He killed another guy for no reason whatsoever, all for Johnson. And this is all a matter of record. You can check this down in Texas. I mean, it's all kinds of records on Mac Wallace's case. You can look, and not any dummy. He's a college-educated man and everything else. And I'm worried that Mac is going to remember everything, but he was pretty soused when we got there. And he's drinking wild turkey, and he's drinking, there was some moonshine, and he passes out. And I cut out back to Gary's cellar, and I got some guy to take me to Dallas. And I went back, and I acted like nothing ever happened. And I was scared that Wallace was going to come after me. I had a old Webley revolver, 38. I kept that pretty close for a while. But I stayed there at Parkland and scrubbed surgery and listened, brought the news, whatever there was, back to Miranda, for 3-4 months. And I said, to Jake Miranda, I said, geez, I'd like to get out of here, go back on the carnivals or something. That's getting pretty dull for me. So a lot of people were dropping dead that knew a lot less than me. I'd been reading this, the railroad guy over there, and a whole bunch of people were dying mysteriously. So I didn't mention it to Miranda that was what the problem was. He called up Rosselli, and Rosselli got an okay, and I could go back to the carnival. Went to work for Bertram Mills Circus as a rigger. I worked a rigger there. Then I worked as I put together a single trapeze act. I went over onto the Berglione Circus de Havre over at Paris, worked with them, and then South Africa, so I went down there with them. That's how I got out of the whole dang thing. I stayed, and then there's a lot of adventures after that. Then I finally come back to the States, and they tell me to come on in. I can come in. I call Sam Giancana in Chicago. He says, come on in. Well, that's the scariest thing I ever did, because you don't know if you're going to get hit when you come in. They're going to take you in the back room and strangle you or whatever. You don't know. I did go in, and so that's the story pretty much. Can I just read you who did it? Okay, it says right here, command area on the second floor of the Texas State Book Depository. Cliff Carter, Carlos Marcello, Jack Rubenstein, George Reese. That was the command area. In the alley behind the fence above the so-called grassy knoll, Clyde Faust, John Ernest, and I know Faust was involved, John Ernest, Jack Grimm I know was involved because he admitted that later to me. Joseph P. Dugan. Nobody's ever mentioned him before that I know of. Okay. Under the bridge, in case the president was not shot, and above in the railroad area. And this was not mentioned much. These people were never used. Charles Harrelson, that's Woody Harrelson's father, Percy Chancey Holt, Charles Frederick Rogers, the guy that I rode up from Houston with, and a man called Dimitri from the ACC, which is a Christian group that did assassinations out of Mexico with Branch 5. He was in my safe house for a while. Okay. The roof on the county records building, Harry Weatherford, which was a cop, Roger Craig, Richard Scalesi, he was from Chicago in the mob, and Michael Victor Mertz, who was also known as Gene Sauter. He was in my safe house for a while. He was a pain in the ass. It was a choice on wine and stuff like that. He couldn't get used to the wine I brought from Safeway. The 6th floor of the Texas Book Depository in the Nest and other setup areas. Ruth Ann Martinez, who was the girl that was in my on the carnival with me for almost 2 years, and Lawrence Loy Factor. They were there with were there. And Daltech's building, the team was supposed to be on top, but had problems. Eugene Hale Brading, Frank Farelli Sturgis, Raphael Chichi Quintero, and Richard Kane from Chicago, who I knew very well. And he later admitted it. Oswald was, he was with Ruth Ann Martinez, but they said he was running around the stupor all the time that thing went down. That he was like, I won't say hypnotized, but like he was doped or something like that. So that was what Mac Wallace, I'm not saying this, I'm saying that I was told this by Mac Wallace while we were getting stoned at this motel with these two girls. They couldn't speak English, so there was no problem on us talking.
You mentioned something about Max Wallace
Yes.
working for Johnson?
He worked as a contractor for Johnson. He was in the defense industry for Lockheed, and he was the purchasing agent. He had been involved with doing several hits for Johnson. He'd been convicted of murder and still got a security clearance with Lockheed later on. And this is all a matter of record. You can look this up. And he was into everything, what they call the Texas Mafia down there. Everything they were into, he was into it as well. And he was Johnson's hitman. That's what he was. It's a well-known fact. Cliff Carter, Johnson's lawyer, was over both of them.
Did you ever feel that you were being under surveillance or your life was in jeopardy at all?
Okay, I have to go a little ahead in the story to answer that. I took a bus much later on and went on witness protection, mob thing in the 70s. And I'm sure I was under surveillance before that. After I went on witness protection and got kicked off it for making my own ID, the FBI man that had busted me, he and I became friends. Wrote to each other, cards, so on. We still do. Commits with me, bring donuts and have a good time. And finally it got round to the Kennedy thing, and he really grilled me on it as a friend. And he got the story you've got pretty much. And I'm sure they have kept watch over me for many, many years.
On Roselli's and Sam Giancana's hit, do you have any idea or theories on who did that? And did Roselli's barrel pop to the surface was that a mistake, or was that meant to scare everybody? Was that meant to come?
I know who got Sam Giancana. It was his nephew or cousin, or whoever it was. I can't think of his name right now, but that was well known around Chicago. He let the guy in. He popped him while he was making the sausages. I've been in that cellar many a time, where he got the basement where the kitchen was there, and he got hit. Sam would never have got hit by anybody that didn't know him. He was too careful. He was paranoid. He'd make paranoid people think he was paranoid. And yeah, John Rosselli's another story. He was due to go up before the House Assassinations Committee, and John had already opened his mouth too many times. Well, Sam did too. These guys just couldn't keep their mouths shut. They had to drop hints. They wouldn't out and out say things, but they would drop hints. You know, they were involved in the biggest hit that ever happened, probably, other than Julius Caesar. And you know, it's pretty hard to keep quiet after you. If I'd done it, I'd want to tell the world myself. John Rosselli went fishing with a bunch of buddies, Carlos Marcello's people, and Carlos Marcello had them chop them up in little pieces, strangle them, chop them up in little pieces, and put them in that barrel, and the barrel was meant to come up. Definitely. That was a warning. But I do know the one thing that we didn't have in common, we both knew about Permindex, because I got paid with Permindex vouchers They would never leave your hands. Guy Bannister or whoever, Jake Miranda later on, if you got the PRMINDEX, permanent exhibitions, out of Toronto, we would get that voucher, have to sign it, for whatever money we got. And at the Cats and Jama Club, a bar down next to Guy Bannister's detective agency, I used to get paid there, and you'd sign it, give it to the barmaid, get your money. The barmaid would go right to Guy Bannister. She'd get her money off him. It was I don't know why they just didn't pay you the money. And the same thing with Jake Miranda. I'd sign the thing at his bar. He'd go in the back room, come back, give me the money. That would be it. I also, the guy that they later was called Clay Shaw, I also met him at Cats and Jama's bar, and he brought in those vouchers, and they didn't go to the bartender that day. They just went into his pocket. He paid us, and that was that. And he and David Ferry and two other guys were there together.
So, Rod, I'm thinking as we're talking about all this that if what you're saying is true about the JFK assassination, this could probably be the most revealing information so far that anybody's ever heard. What's your motivation for divulging this after years and years?
Okay, it's 45 years I've been living with this crap. I've got PTSD from Korea. I've got PTSD from being with around the mob. I was never connected. If I can get a little of that off my whatever it is, I'd like to do it. And besides, I think it's stuff that I know that very few people know. And I don't give a damn if you believe it or don't believe it. I'm doing it for myself, like I said. And I'm getting it out of my system. And that's why I wanted to publish it and get it out.
Rod, your story makes sense because we all know the reputation of carnies.
Yeah.
And how they famous for harboring con men and people trying to escape persecution.
You know, and they put out so much disinformation on the thing. They're still doing it, and it's just they want people to do what we're doing right now.
I hear every name in the book mentioned, including Lee Harvey Oswald's killer. I hear every name mentioned by you except Lee Harvey Oswald. Who is he in all this exactly?
I first saw Lee Harvey Oswald down around Guy Bannister's place, hanging around down there on Carondelet Street. And he wasn't a drinker. He smoked a little, I think. He wasn't a womanizer. He wasn't around at night when everybody else was around in the bars. He was there. He'd come and go and get his Permindex thing just like I did. He did have a place around the corner from Bannister's place that he didn't run it, and that was later the Fair Play for Cuba thing. And that was Bannister's office, is what it was, and probably a storeroom or something he had, and Oswald the same thing. I saw him. You'd see him around. He was with Ferry a lot. They had been together in the CAP. That was a well-known fact. I heard Ferry say that, and you know, and Rogers is another one that nobody's come up with his part and all this stuff. I don't think they've got a book out on him. I never read it, the Grassy Knoll thing, and the story of Charlie Frederick Rogers. I've got to read that one of these days because I know a lot about him and Harrelson being together and Charlie ended up down in Nicaragua or maybe Argentina torturing people. He became a well-known torturer, and I understand, and Del Graham told me this, that Charles Bronson made that movie, The Evil That Men Do, about a torturer. It's called A Doctor or something. And that's the story of Charlie Rogers' torture, teaching techniques down and to police people down from the School of the Americas and down there. And Charlie was a sadistic, rotten human being, let's face it. He's the kind of guy that pulled tails off cats or things like that. And who knows what he did to human beings when he got them.
Rod, you have anything you want to say in closing before I wrap things up today?
Well, I just gave it to you the way it is, shooting from the hip. That's the way I am. And I haven't got too senile yet to remember what happened. That's it. You got it.